The entire restaurant went silent. Even the waiter who had been pouring water into someone's glass froze for a second. My mother-in-law Margaret slowly placed her coffee cup onto the table with perfect calm. She looked directly at my husband, not at me, at him. Then she smiled and said, "You're still young, Noah. You still have time to divorce her." For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I had imagined hearing those words. Nobody laughed, nobody moved. My father quietly lowered his eyes. My mother looked shocked. Noah's younger brother stared at his plate. His sister stopped breathing for what felt like several seconds. Margaret wasn't angry, she wasn't shouting. She sounded completely convinced she was giving her son good advice. I quietly reached for my purse, not because I wanted to leave, but because I suddenly needed something to hold on to. For 4 years, I had ignored every insult, every comparison, every fake smile, every passive-aggressive comment. I had promised myself that no matter what happened, I would never create a scene, so I stayed quiet. Then Noah slowly stood up. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't slam the table, he simply looked at his mother. The expression on his face was different from anything I had seen before, not angry, not emotional, just finished. And in that moment, I realized something. Tonight wasn't the night our marriage would change. It was the night his relationship with his mother would. My name is Isabel Reed. I'm 32 years old. I've been married to Noah for 4 years. People often describe Noah as dependable if someone needed help moving. They called Noah if a neighbor's car broke down. Noah was there before the tow truck. He remembered birthdays, visited his grandparents every Sunday, never forgot anniversaries. He was the kind of man everyone trusted, especially his mother. Margaret adored him, or at least, she adored the version of him she had created in her own mind. She believed he deserved perfection. A successful wife, a prestigious career, a family with influence, someone who would make other people admire the Reed family instead. He married me. I was a public high school art teacher. I loved painting. I loved helping teenagers discover confidence through creativity. The salary wasn't impressive. The work was. Noah used to tell people, "She changes lives every day." Margaret usually replied, "Teachers deserve respect." But I always imagined something bigger for my son. She smiled every time she said it, just enough to make it sound harmless. But after hearing the same sentence dozens of times, you stop believing it's harmless. You begin wondering if maybe you're actually not enough. The first time I met Margaret, she hugged me warmly, complimented my dress, asked about my family. I remember driving home afterward and telling Noah, "Your mother is wonderful." He smiled, but didn't answer. Years later, I finally understood why. She never attacked directly. She planted tiny seeds. At our engagement dinner she said, "I suppose love matters more than financial stability." Everyone laughed awkwardly when we bought our first house. She walked through every room before saying, "It's smaller than I expected." During our honeymoon slideshow, she looked at one picture and quietly asked, "Couldn't you afford Europe?" Always smiling, always polite. Always making sure there was just enough doubt in the room to make everyone uncomfortable. Without looking like the bad person, Noah confronted her many times. Every conversation ended the same way. "I was only joking. You two are too sensitive." I was trying to help. Eventually, even Noah became exhausted, not because he stopped believing me, because proving manipulation is almost impossible when it's hidden behind perfect manners. Our marriage survived because we made one rule. Whatever happened outside our home would never enter it inside our apartment. There were no insults, no comparisons, no Margaret. Friday nights belonged to us. We cooked dinner together, watched old movies, played board games, talked about our students, co-workers, dreams and future. Those evenings reminded me why I married him. He wasn't perfect. Neither was I, but we always chose each other. I honestly believed that would be enough. Until our 4th anniversary arrived, Noah wanted both families together. "My parents and yours have never really celebrated with us," he said. "I want one happy evening." I smiled. "If that's what you want, try." Deep inside, something told me not to, but I ignored that feeling. Sometimes hope can be louder than experience, and that hope led us to the dinner that changed everything. The anniversary dinner was held at a quiet Italian restaurant Noah had reserved weeks in advance. There were 12 of us, my parents, Noah's parents, his younger brother Adam and his wife, his sister Claire, 2 family friends who had known Noah since childhood. The evening started exactly the way I had hoped. People laughed, stories from childhood filled the room. Noah even pulled out a framed photo from our wedding, making everyone smile for almost 2 hours. Margaret behaved perfectly. She complimented the food. She laughed at everyone's jokes. She even asked me how my students were doing, for one brief moment. I allowed myself to believe things had finally changed. Then dessert arrived. The waiter placed a chocolate cake in the middle of the table. Noah stood to thank everyone for coming. I just wanted to celebrate 4 wonderful years with the woman I love. He reached for my hand. Everyone applauded, everyone, except Margaret. She slowly folded her napkin, took a sip of coffee, then calmly said, "Noah, been thinking about something." Room immediately became quiet. She looked directly at her son. Love you more than anyone in this world. Because I love you. I think you still have time to divorce Isabel. The words landed like a stone. Nobody reacted. Even the waiter stopped walking for several seconds. The only sound in the room was the soft music playing through the restaurant speakers. Margaret continued as though she were giving ordinary advice. Still young, you could start over. You deserve someone who shares your ambition. Someone who truly fits this family. I could feel every pair of eyes turning toward me. My face burned with embarrassment, but I refused to cry. Not there, not in front of everyone. I slowly picked up my purse and whispered, I'm going to wait outside. Before I could stand, Noah gently touched my hand. Stay. There was something different in his voice, calm, steady, certain. He looked at his mother. For 4 years. Listened to comments like this. Kept telling myself you didn't really mean them. Kept making excuses for you. Margaret smiled confidently. Only want what's best for you. Noah answered quietly. You only want what you imagined for me. Those aren't the same thing. Room fell silent again. Margaret laughed nervously. Oh, Noah, don't make this dramatic. I'm only worried. Noah slowly shook his head. Worried people ask questions. They don't humiliate someone on their anniversary. Nobody moved. Claire quietly looked down at the table. Adam sighed heavily. My father reached across the table and squeezed my mother's hand. Noah continued. Do you remember our first Christmas after we got married? Margaret frowned. What about it? You asked Isabel if she planned to get a real career. You laughed. Everyone else laughed because they thought you were joking. I saw her smile disappear. Margaret opened her mouth to interrupt. Noah didn't let her. Second anniversary. You told our friends my college girlfriend would have been a better match. Easter. You asked whether I regretted marrying a teacher. Every birthday, every holiday, you found a new way to make my wife feel like she doesn't belong. Margaret's smile finally disappeared. Never said she didn't belong. Never had to. You made sure she felt it. I looked at Noah in complete surprise. I had never heard him say all of this aloud, not once for years. He had protected me quietly tonight. He wasn't protecting me anymore, he was defending me. Margaret leaned back in her chair. So you're choosing her over your own mother? Noah answered immediately. No, I'm choosing respect over disrespect. There's a difference. Restaurant remained completely silent. Even people at nearby tables had stopped eating. Margaret crossed her arms. I sacrificed my whole life for you. I raised you. I gave you everything. This is how you repay me. Noah's eyes softened. I'll always be grateful for everything you did. Gratitude doesn't give anyone permission to hurt my wife. Those words changed something in the room for the first time. Richard, Noah's father, spoke. He's right, Margaret. Margaret turned toward him in disbelief. Richard, not you too. Richard looked exhausted. Watched this happen for years. I should have said something much sooner. I didn't. That was my mistake. Margaret stared at him without saying a word. The confidence she'd carried into the restaurant slowly began to disappear. She looked around the table. Nobody was agreeing with her. Nobody was defending her for the first time. She was completely alone the next morning. Noah didn't go to work. He called his office, took the day off, and quietly said, There are some things that can't wait another week. After breakfast, he looked at me. I'm going to my parents' house. I asked softly, Do you want me to come? He shook his head. No, this conversation has been delayed for 4 years. It needs to start with me. I nodded. Whatever happened next. I trusted him. Margaret was already waiting when Noah arrived. She had convinced herself the night before had only been an emotional misunderstanding. She smiled. I knew you'd calm down. I made your favorite coffee. Noah remained standing. I won't stay long. Margaret frowned. Still upset? No, I'm finally being honest. He reached into his bag and placed a thick black notebook on the table. Margaret looked confused. What's that? My journal. I started writing after our second anniversary. She laughed. Been keeping a diary? No, been keeping a record. He opened the notebook. Every page had a date, a place, and a short sentence. December 25. Mom asked Isabel if teaching was only temporary because she expected me to marry someone with a real profession. April 17. Compared Isabel to my ex-girlfriend in front of relatives. August 3. Mom told neighbors I settled for less than I deserved. Thanksgiving. Mom joked that our marriage wouldn't survive 5 years. There were dozens of entries. Margaret slowly stopped smiling. You actually wrote all this down? Yes, because every time I confronted you. You said it never happened. I needed to remind myself that I wasn't imagining it. She looked away for the first time. She had no explanation. 3 days later, Noah invited the entire family to our home. Nobody knew why. When everyone arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Richard sat quietly. Adam and Claire looked nervous. Margaret barely looked at me. Noah stood in the middle of the living room. I didn't invite everyone here to embarrass anyone. I invited you because our family can't keep pretending everything is fine. He held up the notebook. For 4 years, watched the woman I love be treated like she doesn't belong. Every time someone stayed silent, they accidentally told her it was acceptable. Room remained silent, then Noah did something none of us expected. He handed the notebook to his father. Richard slowly turned the pages. With every page, his face became heavier. Finally, he closed it, looked at Margaret. Quietly said, "I failed both of you. I failed my son. And I failed Isabel," Margaret whispered. "Richard," he interrupted gently. "No, me finish. I stayed quiet because I wanted peace. Silence didn't create peace, created permission." Adam lowered his head. "I should have spoken up too." Claire wiped tears from her eyes. "I always noticed how differently Isabel was treated. Kept telling myself it wasn't my place." She looked at me. "I'm sorry." Margaret finally stood, her voice shook. "I never hated you, Isabel. I was afraid." Everyone looked at her. Noah got married. Felt like I was losing the most important person in my life. Every achievement he celebrated with you reminded me he didn't need me the way he once did. So instead of accepting that, I convinced myself you were the problem." Tears rolled down her face. "I didn't realize I was becoming the problem." Room stayed quiet. I slowly stood, walked toward her. Said something I had waited 4 years to say. "I never wanted to replace you. Only wanted the chance to become part of your family." Margaret covered her face and cried. "For 4 years, I made you earn a place that was already yours. I'm sorry." Noah took my hand, then looked at everyone. "When Mom told me to divorce Isabel, she expected me to choose. Marriage isn't choosing one family over another. It's creating a new family." He smiled at his mother. "I'll always be your son. Before anyone asks me to leave my wife, they need to understand something. I made vows to Isabel. I didn't make vows to anyone else. If respecting my marriage makes someone uncomfortable, then they'll have to learn to live with that." Richard nodded proudly. "So will we." The first time, everyone applauded, not loudly, not dramatically, just sincerely. Epilogue. Over the next year, things didn't become perfect overnight. Trust never returns in a single conversation. But something important changed. Margaret stopped making comparisons. She started asking questions instead of making assumptions. When I received my school's Teacher of the Year award, she was sitting in the front row. She stood and clapped before anyone else. After the ceremony, she hugged me. "Proud of you." Those were 4 simple words, but they were 4 words I never expected to hear. As Noah and I drove home, he smiled. I thought I was protecting everyone by staying quiet. I squeezed his hand, and now he looked at me. "Now I know that protecting peace is never worth sacrificing the person you love. Sometimes the strongest answer to 'you should divorce her' isn't anger, it isn't revenge, it's simply looking at the person you married, taking their hand, and saying, 'No. She's my family, and that's not going to change.'"